Greetings, all you free folk. Most of you watching this video are probably expecting this to become a rant about how Rings of Power is shit. However, while it no doubt is, I would be very late to that party since many people here on YouTube have made that case far better and in far greater detail than I could, since I will from here on out refuse to go back to the source of my disappointment, being, of course, the Amazon Prime series Rings of Power in its entirety. So, if you are interested in such entertainment, please give all those people shown on the screen a visit. They deserve it, and you will also be much entertained there. No, I intend not to rage on too much, because instead I want to share with everyone who wants to listen the stories that I think should and could have been adapted based on J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion. But first, since this is my first time creating on this here platform, allow me to introduce myself. For anyone who does not care about this introduction, feel free to skip ahead to the relevant timestamps down below. I am Barbarossa. I am, of course, an admirer of J.R.R. Tolkien's writing. The Hobbit was the first real book I ever read back in elementary school. I've spent years falling asleep to the readings of both The Lord of the Rings as well as The Silmarillion. Middle-earth captured my mind so much so that I think no other fantasy world will ever be able to replace it in my heart. The love for fantastical storytelling has introduced me to reading, games, music and movies I would not want to miss. I have even tried a bit of writing myself. And lastly, telling and living through imaginative stories has led me to pursue a career as an actor. So I am not an accomplished screenwriter, author, or anything like that. And yet, even I know that Rings of Power is a train wreck of legendary magnitude. From stupidly limited material, to incompetence in the writing room, to straight up bad research. Now, it shall be noted that I am fully aware as to why not many people have read The Silmarillion. And it has to do with writing. Because The Silmarillion is many things, but definitely not a novel. So, it does not read like one. There is very little dialogue in it. Almost no scenes are played out, only described. We're being told everything that happened, why and to what end, but what we don't get is the how. So it's more alike to an ancient saga of the Silmaril, a history book of Middle-earth or a mythology, rather than a singular fantasy story. Which, as far as I'm aware, is exactly what Tolkien was going for. So, to adapt this, we would need to extract the characters, and then we need someone competent to write the missing dialogues between those characters for us. So let us begin with a bit of character extraction. Attention! There are massive spoilers for the story as well as a potential adaptation. If you do not want the story spoiled, do not continue. You have been warned. Here there be dragons. The Silmarillion is packed with characters. And while it is quite the sausage party, or to be more correct, a relatively realistic depiction of a medieval fantasy war, it also features impressive women, some who Tolkien wrote himself, and some that can be added without having to assassinate his existing characters. It features brave, doomed, cursed and cruel characters in every race that lives in Middle-earth. It offers redemption, madness and betrayal, as it does loyalty, love and honor. But since the Quenta Silmarillion is, as its name translates, the story of the Silmaril, and since they are inanimate objects, without a will of their own this time, we will need to follow multiple characters over quite some time. And it just makes sense to focus on some of the longest lived and central characters tied directly to the Silmaril. Therefore, I primarily want to share the story of Maedhros and Maglor, Sons of Fëanor, the creator of the Silmaril. They are born in Aman, where Frodo and Gandalf sail at the end of Lord of the Rings, under the protection of the Valar, as Sons of Fëanor, the firstborn of High King Finwë. Now I have specified the firstborn because Finwë has two more sons, Fingolfin and Finarfin, from his second wife, Indis, as his first wife and mother of Fëanor, Míriel, drained her own life force into her son and dies. it's complicated. However, due to elves being of course immortal, and Finwë grieving a while after Miriel dies, Fingolfin and Finarfin are barely 10 years older than their nephews Maedhros and Maglor. Note, all dates are not from the Silmarillion, instead from the fan wiki of the characters, since Tolkien does not state that many birth dates in the Silmarillion. And even though their father, Fëanor, has a dislike for Finwë's second wife, his half-brothers, and all his future nephews and nieces, Maedhros and Maglor don't seem to at all, Maedhros becoming very close friends with his cousin Fingon. However, by doing of Melkor, the most powerful and evil Valar, the rift between their father and uncles grows deeper, eventually leading to Fëanor drawing his sword on his brother Fingolfin and threatening his life, under the false impression his brother wants to cheat him out of his birthright, which gets him exiled. He takes all his 7 sons and the Silmaril, which he had already created at that point, to Formenos, and his father Finwë even leaves with him, refusing to rule as king while his son is banished. In Formenos, Melkor tries to convince and warn Fëanor to leave the safety of Aman and shake off a supposed yoke of the rule of the Valar, but Fëanor just tells him to get off his lawn. Yet, when Fëanor is summoned before the Valar again 50 years later, and Fingolfin declares their feud as forgotten and forgiven, Melkor, with the help of Ungoliant, destroys the Trees of Light and breaks into Formenos, killing Finwë and stealing the Silmaril. Fëanor, enraged by the demand of the Valar to give up the Silmaril to restore the trees, thinking back to Melkor's words to him, is struck with even more grief and the desire for vengeance when his sons come to tell him his father is dead and his treasure already stolen. He, as now new High King, tries to convince the people to go after Melkor, to Beleriand, and then Fëanor swore a terrible oath. His 7 sons leapt straightway to his side, and took the self-same vow together, and red as blood shone their drawn swords in the glare of the torches. They swore an oath which none shall break, and none should take, by the name even of Ilúvatar, calling the everlasting dark upon them if they kept it not. The oath itself is given by Christopher Tolkien in the History of Middle-earth as follows. Be he foe or friend, be he foul or clean, brood of Morgoth or bright Vala, Eldar or Maya or aftercomer, man yet unborn upon Middle-earth, neither law nor love, nor league of swords, dread nor danger, not doom itself shall defend him from Fëanor and Fëanor's kin, whoso hideth or hoardeth or in hand taketh, finding keepeth or afar casteth a Silmaril. This swear we all. Death we will deal him ere day's ending, woe unto world's end. Our word hear thou, Eru Allfather, to the everlasting darkness doom us, if our deed faileth. On the holy mountain hear in witness, and our vow remember, Manwë and Varda. Thus spoke Maedhros and Maglor, and Celegorm, Curufin and Caranthir, Amrod and Amras, princes of the Noldor, and many quailed to hear the dread words. For so sworn, good or evil, an oath may not be broken, and it shall pursue oath-keeper and oath-breaker, to world's end. This oath should, in my opinion, be converted into the intro to each episode, read by multiple different characters, because with this, the war for the Silmaril has begun, and the words therein will be a driving force until the last scene. Anyway, back to story. Now, most of the Noldor, including Fingolfin and Finarfin, do want to avenge their king and thus set out after Melkor. But when they reach the Teleri city of Alqualonde to ask for ships to sail to Beleriand, they are denied, and the Teleri king Olwe tries to convince the Noldor to turn back. But due to his temper, his oath, and thinking the Valar are trying to intervene, Fëanor is done asking, and a battle ensues. The first kinslaying. With a bitter victory achieved and the ships secured, however, not enough to ferry their entire people over, The Noldor are soon met with an emissary from the Valar, Mandos, who proclaims their banishment from Aman and also dooms their mission to reclaim the Silmaril to fail. Only a few, under the lead of Finarfin, abandon their quest and turn back, but none of his children like Galadriel or Finrod do. Instead, they join with the host of Fingolfin, that is by far the biggest. But Fëanor, thinking many of them too weak to do what needs to be done, sets sail first with his loyal supporters, promising Fingolfin to send back the ships after they have reached Beleriand. A promise he breaks by burning the ships upon his arrival, upsetting Maedhros, who is now separated from his good friend Fingon, and causing Maglor to write the song The Fall of the Noldor, the Noldorlante. When Melkor hears of the arrival of Fëanor's army, he redirects orcs besieging the cities of the Falas, where some Teleri who stayed behind in Beleriand in search of their missing King Thingol now live, to drive them back into the sea. Fëanor and his sons are attacked at their camp in Hithlum by orcs, and, though outnumbered, are victorious in the Dagor Nuin Gileath. But Fëanor, pursuing the fleeing orcs like a madman, is cut off from his sons, and fighting multiple Balrogs, is fatally wounded by Gothmog, the lord of the Balrogs. But they are sent fleeing by his sons, coming to rescue their father, and before his death, Fëanor, having seen the strength of Angband, Melkor's fortress, states that no power of the elves will ever bring it down. Yet, he reminds his sons of their oath. Okay, I promise, we're done with Fëanor. From here on, it's really about Maedhros and Maglor. As they are the oldest brothers, they of course lead their brothers and their people to reclaim the Silmaril, a task their now dead father has declared impossible, that a god proclaimed to their face is doomed. Yet, a task they have sworn to see through by any and all means, not holding back against anyone, and dooming themselves should they leave a possibility untried. So they are quite eager when there is a message from Melkor to negotiate peace, even possibly the return of one of the Silmaril. They are not stupid, they expect it to be a trap, so they send a greater force than was agreed to. But then, so does Melkor, and he also sends a bunch of Balrogs again, causing Maedhros to get captured and chained to the outer walls of Angband. Melkor tries to use him as a bargaining chip to get the Noldor to leave him alone, which, due to the Sons of Fëanor being bound by their oath, just isn't going to happen. That's about when, from the north, Fingolfin, his children, and the children of Finarfin come into Hithlum. They have taken a longer, dangerous, and for many deadly route over the Helcaraxe into Beleriand, and also blame those deaths on the Sons of Fëanor and their people because of that whole betrayal with the ships and stuff that they saw burn even in Aman. And there is lots of tension between the two camps. But Fingon, Maedhros' good friend, sets out alone to free him, which he does, with the help of a great eagle. Yes, you can shut up about it now. However, Fingon has to cut off Maedhros' sword hand to free him from the chains. Out of gratitude for his rescue and regret for their betrayal, Maedhros even abdicates his crown in favor of his uncle Fingolfin. Now that I have rambled on for a while about some of what happens in the Silmarillion, I want to talk about what I think a few of the characters, specifically the Sons of Fëanor, are like. Beginning with the twins, Amrod and Amras. As the two youngest sons of Fëanor, the twins don't have a lot that is character-specific. They are said to have become great hunters and always follow the lead of their oldest brother Maedhros. I would maybe have elves age a little differently because I would want Amrod and Amras very young and impressionable, being barely 100 years old when Fëanor dies. They are, at the beginning, almost children in this war, and due to a lack of parents to teach them, their brothers will. Which could further the divide between Maedhros, who teaches them skills in weaponry and politics, and Maglor, who may teach them general knowledge, philosophy, arts, and maybe magic. But they themselves are very rarely disagreeing or fighting with each other. Just two good boys. Next up, we have Curufin. A very capable craftsman like his father, yet less renowned than both his father and his son, Celebrimbor. He is seemingly also politically savvy as he stages a coup together with his brother Celegorm in Nargothrond. However, when it fails, his son decides to cut ties with him, leaving me with the conclusion that the relationship between father and son may not be the best. Perhaps Curufin is always too critical of his son's work, or his decisions in general? And since we know about his son, yet nothing of his wife, or maybe just Celebrimbor's mother, there is also potential for personal conflict here. And to come back to Amrod and Amras, maybe he teaches them a thing or two about craftsmanship. Another pair, however maybe a more conflict-heavy one, Celegorm and Caranthir. Conflict starts already with their surnames. Celegorm the Fair and Caranthir the Dark. I think it's safe to say they don't like each other too much. They are both described as great hunters as well, with Celegorm being accompanied to Middle-earth by Huan, a great hound gifted to him by Orome, the Valar of war and hunt. That favoritism shown by a god could also drive conflict between them. Once in Middle-earth, they are probably not accidentally settling in realms that are literally separated by the lands of all of their brothers. They work together when needed, yes, but I doubt those alliances are ever without trouble. Maybe this is one-sided, that Celegorm is always outshining Caranthir, maybe unjustly so. Maybe it's mutual dislike or hatred. Both is possible. They are both great hunters and archers, so that's what they pass on to Amrod and Amras. For the sake of clarity, I want it stated here that I don't like Celegorm. Apart from him and Curufin trying to take the throne of Nargothrond, he also tries to force Luthien to marry him, and, when he fails, he tries to kidnap her, which makes him the only son of Fëanor who is actively going out of his way to do evil, even when his oath is not driving him. So it is no wonder that Huan will part ways with his master over this. Noteworthy is also that Caranthir is responsible for their alliances with the dwarves, developing kinship with Azachal of Belegost and Telchar of Nogrod. He is not technically Lord of Nogrod, but like the only important character from there. While in the book, Caranthir has no love for the dwarves and does not hold them in high regard, I would rather have him be an honest friend, maybe feeling more kinship to the grim and strong folk of Durin than his own mostly fair kin that he lives the furthest from, except for those who follow his lead. Also because none of the Sons of Fëanor have a great relationship with the dwarves, yet they fight side by side on numerous occasions. Someone needs to be responsible for keeping at least decent relations. And Caranthir's people could also have a certain vibe to them. After all, what kind of people would willingly follow the grimmest of the Noldor princes? And lastly, the oldest and longest lived of the Sons of Fëanor, Maedhros and Maglor. Someone on YouTube used Maglor as the name of a villain in a thought experiment for Rings of Power, and I cannot remember or figure out who it was. Reveal yourself, evildoer! Maedhros is the oldest of the brothers. He is much like his father, at least in temper and determination. He is driven by the desire to reclaim the Silmaril and leading multiple alliances of his brothers, various cousins, sons of Fingolfin and Finarfin, especially Fingon, as well as men and even dwarves against Melkor. He lost his right hand when Fingon saved him from captivity, which would only help to fuel his hatred of Melkor and his creations. He abdicates as High King of the Noldor in favor of his uncle Fingolfin, as a sign of gratitude towards his cousin and as a reparation for their betrayal by burning the ships. Maybe the loss of his hand makes him unable to use his favorite weapon, if it is a greatsword for example. He is said to be a great swordsman, which leads to him needing to adjust his fighting style, leading to retraining a la Jaime Lannister. Maybe he trades weapons with Maglor, as a symbol of their unity and brotherhood. Maedhros is trying to present a united front against Melkor, but has to face many obstacles in trying to do so. Conflict between his brothers, political backlash for Celegorm's and Curufin's coup in Nargothrond, the appearance and spread of the young race of humans in Beleriand. And not to forget, being totally shut out and declared foe of King Thingol after he finally receives news of the massacre at Alqualonde on his people and his brother Olwe. Maedhros is determined to reclaim the Silmaril at all costs and by all means necessary, including waging war on other foes of Melkor and slaughtering peaceful people driven by his oath, but no more as an accomplice, but as the leader. He will even go so far as to battle gods and angels to fulfill his oath. And last, but not least of the Sons of Fëanor, Maglor. Maglor is seemingly the only one actually regretful of Fëanor's oath and the atrocities it leads and led to. He is complicit, and yet, even though he cannot but fulfill his destiny, he regrets it. When his father draws his sword in Alqualonde, he does too. Maybe he is shown to refrain from killing anyone unarmed, as his brothers, primarily Maedhros, Caranthi and Celigorm, show lack of such restraint. And when he arrives in Middle-earth and his father decides not to send back the ships for their uncle and cousins, but to burn them, he sings the Nol Dolante, calling the betrayal he was part of the reason for their people's fall. He didn't do all this because he wanted to. He did it because he is bound by oath to. He is reluctant, though complicit, in the slaughter at the mouths of Sirion his brother Maedhros orders, because he has literally no choice in it anymore. And yet, he is again regretful of what he did, taking in Elrond and Elros as adoptive sons after murdering their village. Just by the way, fuck you, Rings of Power. What the shit was Galadriel doing there? Some beach vacation? I think Maglor would make a good main character for an adaptation, or one of a handful, and one that is in the center of it all. He is no shining beacon of goodness. He would be struggling morally until the very end, and yet his wisdom redeems him in the end. Heaviest spoilers incoming. Because after Melkor's defeat, by the combined strength of the Valar and all three races of the world, the two remaining Silmaril are recovered. But when Maedhros and Maglor demand they be returned to them, the only remaining Sons of Fëanor, they are denied. For all the evil they have done, their claim to the Silmaril is declared to be void, but still they are not free of their oath. And so after Maedhros for one final time convinces Maglor, they reclaim them by force, fighting, just the two of them, against the forces of the Valar. Only because of the mercy of the Valar are they allowed to survive and flee with their treasure. But they have no cause for cheers. They cannot bear to touch the Silmaril, the contact burning and singeing their hands. The only characters that are said to have felt the same are Carcharoth and Melkor. They realize that with all they have done, all the lives they either sacrificed outright or ended themselves, they now cannot stand to any more touch the thing they have done all this for. Maedhros, struck with grief and madness, throws himself with his Silmaril into death in a fiery pit. But Maglor, the calmer, wiser brother, lets go of the mad need to possess them that has brought all his brothers and his father to their death, that cost uncounted lives in more than 5,000 years of war, that has caused a literal reshaping of the world. And he throws his Silmaril into the ocean, never to be recovered, lest the desire for them may fall upon anyone else again. Maglor is also the only character whose end is uncertain. He's never reported dead, so he could have lived up to the Third Age and the War of the Ring, potentially, being an immortal elf and all that. He never again set foot among his people, though it is unclear whether that means the Noldor or the elves in general. However, his last deed leads me to believe he spoke again with Elrond after the fact, because if anyone had seen him, they would have tried to stop him, and yet we still know what he did. And given that all the books and tales are, within Tolkien's canon, said to have been gathered by Elrond, he is the only one who would need to know. Rand, he is also the only one who definitely knew there never was a Silmaril in any random tree at the top of fucking Caradhras Rings of Power. Maglor tries and to some level succeeds at being a good father to Amrod and Amras, as well as Elrond and Elros. Their adoption could also drive conflict between him and Maedhros, since he adopts them after the same battle in which Amrod and Amras die. Another hint of this may be that some of Elrond's wisdom seems to have direct parallels to the experiences of Maglor. I'll give you an example. In the Fellowship of the Ring, the book that is, Gimli says this as they are about to leave Rivendell. "Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens," said Gimli. Most people would agree with this. Abandoning friends or family in dark times is a dick move. You may have seen this quote on inspirational posters already, however, what Elrond responds is always left out. "Maybe," said Elrond, "but let him not vow to walk in the dark who has not seen the nightfall." He is telling Gimli not to take an oath when he cannot foresee where it may lead. Something many people, including Maglor, would also agree with, often sadly and remorseful through hindsight. The debate continues. "Yet sworn word may strengthen quaking heart," said Gimli. Gimli makes another valid point. If you're uncertain, swearing an oath, even just to yourself, can breed determination to follow through. "Or break it," said Elrond. "Look not too far ahead." Who is ultimately right, if there even is such a thing, is a discussion for philosophers to have, but this is exactly the type of caution to oaths that I would expect of someone who has seen their adoptive father and his entire line doomed by a hastily, angrily sworn oath. He has seen Maglor heartbroken about the things Fëanor's oath has made him do, and seen him try to find at least some way to do some good of his own volition, to counteract the evil he has no choice in anymore. But enough of my headcanon. Let's get to more of my headcanon. Brace yourselves, for we write an original, strong female character. Wait, no, that was a joke. I have already revealed myself as a sexist, racist fucker for not liking Rings of Power. My bad, I could never. So, about this character, let's call her Nikesse. Why? Because I like it. It means frost flower, and it is something that happened to be on the page of my Elvish dictionary that I just opened. Rand, you should have done that a few times too, Rings of Power. All I'll say is Hordern, as a name for a place in Middle-earth, can go drown in a volcano. So, Nikesse is, well, I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, give me a second. Daughter of Belek, the head of the Rangers and Scouts of King Thingol. She is a capable warrior, having possibly fought at her father's side in numerous battles and skirmishes before the Noldor even returned to Beleriand. Maybe sometimes even against her father's wishes. Let's also say she falls in love with Maglor. Now, Maglor is a capable warrior, but is best known for his skill in singing and writing songs. Maybe that is how Nikesse falls in love with him, possibly at a competition with Daeron, a Teleri, whom she could escort there. I would like her to be a loving mother figure to both Amrod and Amras, who left their mother behind at a young age, and later Elrond and Elros. Maybe her desire for wanting to be a mother comes from being unable to bear children of herself, possibly due to a war injury, explaining why she and Maglor never had kids of their own. Maybe she gets depressive about it, especially when Amrod and Amras are off somewhere else, and the only thing cheering her up is Maglor's songs. Maybe she relates to Caranthir, who is also always grim and depressing. Maybe he is even helping her grapple with the topic of depression, because she for some reason believes Maglor won't understand. Maybe she got wounded because of Fëanor's oath in a battle initiated by Maedhros, making Maglor feel even more guilt and anger to Maedhros. Or maybe Maglor didn't want her to fight in said battle, causing a heated discussion with Maglor ordering her to stay behind, only for her to respond that she, as a Teleri, is not bound by the command of a Noldor prince, and she will fight at the side of her pseudo-sons Amrod and Amras. Potential for love, tragedy, death, and even more conflict between Maglor, who maybe cares for her as she is injured, and Maedhros, who believes Maglor is not pulling his weight in their quest. Maybe Maedhros accuses Maglor of caring more for her than a brother who got heavily wounded in the same battle. I almost feel like we have a scene there. And while we're with the ladies, I'll do something dangerous. A possible gender bender. Now, I repeat, this is a possibility. not a necessity. And the reasons why this even is possible, I will clearly state. The character I am talking about is Azahal, a dwarf, Lord of Belegost in the Blue Mountains. Now, why do I think this character could be a woman? 2 reasons. First, Azahal is not a name, but a title. It translates to warrior. And we only know this title because dwarves don't always like to tell people, especially elves, their real names. And second, the dwarves of Belegost are said to wear great war masks on their helmets, which are said to even protect somewhat against dragonfire. So we would not know who is really underneath that mask. Maybe the title also has been passed on once or twice, so the Azahal that fought at the side of Thingol's forces against Melkor's creations isn't the same who will later fight in the Union of Maedhros, but possibly a daughter, or even granddaughter, who had to take up that title because she had no brother who could do in her stead. Or maybe she just really wanted to, I don't know. Now, do I just want Azahal to be a woman for some agenda? No. I want to bind her deeper into the narrative, because otherwise the character is only that one dwarf who does that one cool thing. And I would do so by giving her the only son of Fëanor that was apparently married, but whose wife we know nothing about, as a partner. Caranthir. The one who already has more affection than any of his brothers to the dwarves. So it's not impossible he may fall in love in the mountains he lives closest by. And also, he does not need to know who she truly is. The woman fell in love with him, but Azahal is aiding in the preparations for war. Maybe she writes lots of letters home to her sisters, who run the business of their land while she is away, staying with Caranthir. Letters no elf knows how to read. Maybe there's tension from Maedhros, who is rightfully fearing betrayal, and someone sending encrypted letters out of his camp is a prime suspect. Maybe, unlike Nikesse, she does not argue about going to war, agreeing to stay behind in safety, deciding between the wishes of her partner and the duty of her people. And we don't know what she chose because we don't know it's her, until we see her face revealed underneath the mask, armor and body broken by Glaurung, the father of the dragons, whom she sent fleeing from the battlefield. And the dwarves around paying their respects, not to Maedhros, whose union is shattered in a terrible defeat, but to Caranthir, who lost his partner without knowing, and to the Lord/Lady of Belegost. Again, this conversion is not needed, but at least it's possible and plausible, without having to destroy Azahal, nor Caranthir, nor any character involved. And look at that! It's also an interracial relationship, like in the most literal sense of the word. And not again just between an elf and a man, but something actually kind of new. And badass dwarf woman, with beard. What's not to like? And even if you don't want to change Azahal, this female dwarf could also just be renamed and all but her end could stay the same. There is still so much more. Want to see a rap battle between Galadriel's brother Finrod and motherfucking Sauron? Want to see Fingolfin 1v1 Melkor? Want to see Belek tragically killed by his best friend with a cursed blade? Want to see Luthien make Sauron her bitch without ever touching a sword or riding a horse in slow motion? Want to see what the woman who taught Galadriel could do? Want Beren to pull the bossest move a one-handed man can? To say nothing of the battles that have names that slap harder than Rings of Power's Battle of Haldern has the capacity to dream about. And let's also not forget our villains. Ever wonder why Sauron is still the second in command after Melkor instead of a Balrog or a dragon? Does he need to prove himself? If so, how does he? Anyone want to see the only named and specifically defined vampire in Tolkien's world? Want to see a dragon drive a whole family line to suicide, or another to crush a fucking mountain? Because I fucking do! And please, remember, even with everything I talked about, most of it is already reduced down. There could be an entire season before Fëanor's death. All of it and then some is already there. I hope you enjoyed this introduction and little thought experiments, and I hope you understand why I had to make this video. Rings of Power has murdered characters and lore in my favorite fantasy world, and I will not give up fighting for it. To quote Fingon at the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, Utulien aure, the day has come. I don't know if this will become a channel with regular uploads, and I don't know if I will, in the future, ever cover other topics, but I had a lot of this on my mind since before there was a rumor of a Lord of the Rings series, and I just needed to speak my mind after the disaster it was. If you liked what you heard, leave a like. And if you have any recommendations, questions, advice or criticism, feel free to comment. With all that, I hope you have a great day, and to see you in the next video on my ideas on how I would like the Silmarillion be adapted.